Welcome to Bucs Insider Live. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith, and we have more free agency news to talk about. I love this time of year.
I thought this was supposed to be quiet this year.
We had no money. We weren't going to do anything, right? Wasn't that the sentiment? Yeah, and then now we've got all this news, which is so exciting. Let's start, of course, with the Baker Mayfield signing. He's now officially met with the media, and last week when we did the show, it was sort of like there were reports we couldn't talk about yet. So now we can talk about it. Tell me your initial thoughts on bringing Baker Mayfield in and what you think his participation could be in this team, what he could bring, his experience, and just kind of what fans might not know about him at this point.
I think the move makes sense for both the team and the player. The Bucs obviously needed some sort of veteran competition at the very least for Kyle Trask, and you have a guy that has started in this league quite a bit. And Baker, I mean, look around the league. Where else could he have gone with as clear of an opportunity to compete for a starting job? You know, it's not being given to him. They've made it extremely clear, especially to him, that this is a competition. So Kyle Trask could win that job. And Baker Mayfield could win that job. But where else was Baker going to go for this clear cut of an opportunity?
Yeah, and to have the kind of weapons the Bucs have, you know, that if you're going to try to compete for a starting job, then you care about what's going to be there if you win it. And
yeah, he's looking forward to throwing the ball to Mike and Chris. He called them dogs.
I love that.
Which is true. Now, what you're hoping for, obviously, is that you get the 2020 version of Baker Mayfield. And, you know, in 2021, he struggled with a shoulder injury. Who knows how much that affected him, but it wasn't as good of a year. Last year with Carolina, didn't really work out. And then he kind of had a little renaissance there at the end with the Rams, particularly starting less than 48 hours after he got there and helping them beat the Raiders. But if you can get the 2020 version of Baker Mayfield, which is not that long ago, this is pretty good. I mean, he led his team to the playoffs. First time they've been in playoffs in like 18 years. 62.8% completion percentage, 3,500 yards, and that touchdown to interception ratio is what you're looking for. That's what hasn't been there in the majority of in his other seasons. That really good touchdown to interception ratio. Too many picks in other seasons. But man, if you can get that, and there's no reason why that can't happen, right? I mean, the circumstances were probably really good in Cleveland that particular year, but I think you got a similar thing here with the Buccaneers. So, you know, it's. Who knows, right? It's not like the Buccaneers know for sure that Baker Mayfield's going to play that good, but there's a chance, there's a shot. It's totally worth the roll of the dice, I think.
And I think it's going to be so fun to watch a quarterback competition that I was thinking my time here with the Bucs, I haven't watched that.
We were talking about that the other day.
Yeah, how long has it been since there's been a quarterback competition? And man, talk about training camp storylines that are fun to watch and you know, reasons to come out and come to practice. It's going to be really fun to watch.
I mean, 2012 there was Josh Freeman and Mike Glennon, but I don't think we knew it was a competition. We didn't know that Greg Schiano wanted to get rid of Josh Freeman, so it took like 3 games in the season. 2009, when Josh Freeman was drafted, you had him and Byron Leftwich and Josh Johnson, and maybe in May you didn't know who was going to start, but it really wasn't a big competition in training camp. So I really can't tell you. Maybe Vinny Testaverde and Chris Chandler back in the early 90s, there just haven't been a lot of these QB competitions. So it's kind of interesting.
It is.
It'll make for an interesting camp for sure.
It is, which is, you know, we kind of enjoy the interesting storylines over here.
You know, you really don't want to have quarterback competitions a lot, right? Because you want to have a good, solid, settled quarterback. But hey, if we don't have that in Tom Brady anymore, then this could be the next best thing.
Yep, I agree. And also another addition for free agency. The Bucs now have a new running back. Tell us about this addition and what you think that role could be, looking at especially with Rachaad White.
I'm going to do the same thing I did with Baker Mayfield there, and I don't mean to be cherry picking here and saying, you know, picking the one time they were good and saying that's that, but you can understand why the Buccaneers would sign these players, because they have reason to believe they can be that version of themselves. Chase Edmonds spent 4 pretty good years in Arizona, then last year signed with Miami, and Miami signed about 1,000 running backs, give or take a few, and so he never really got much of a role there in Miami and got traded to Denver, whose offense was a mess too. So if you write that off and go back to his last full season in Arizona, that was 2021. Again, not very long ago. These are his per game and per carry averages, so that's about 75 yards a game. Would you take 75 yards of scrimmage from your backup running back per game? And yards per carry is good, yards per reception. You don't see yards per touch very often. You know, that's yards for all his carries and catches combined. You just don't see that stuff very often. So is 5.7 good? Do you have any idea? Is 5.7 good? It's pretty good for running back. Last year, our guy, Leonard Fournette, was 4.5. Rachaad White was 5.0. Saquon Barkley was 4.7, Josh Jacobs 5.2, Nick Chubb. I'm not saying he's Josh Jacobs or Nick Chubb. I'm just saying there's reason to believe he can give you good quality snaps on offense and be an asset to that offense.
Yeah, I think I saw that, he and Saquon Barkley are the only ones from that draft class that have, 1,500 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards.
I didn't see that
both.
one. Good one.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, anytime it's you and Saquon Barkley, I'll take that stat anytime. And so, yeah, what do you see as the way potentially he and Rachaad White kind of get used off of each other? How could they help each other potentially, and just now, again, we have a new offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
We don't know as much about what the offense overall could look like, except he did say he really wants to emphasize that run game.
He does want to make sure that we have a running game, which we haven't had for the last couple of years, and so I think that means, you know, like most teams, your running backs, you do have a number one. Rashad White's your number one, but you have several that you use quite a bit during the game, and most teams are like that. Most teams don't have one Saquon Barkley that they ride on every snap, or Derrick Henry, so you need a couple guys, and I could see him especially carving out a third down role. He's a good pass catcher out of the backfield. I would imagine, although I can't say I know for sure, that having played that role in his career pretty steadily, he's probably a good pass blocker as well. Has to be in order to be the third down guy. Rashad White catches the ball well, but I don't know if he's your every down third down guy. So at the very least, I think he could be that.
Okay, and then I know we also had another signing, Cam Gill. This is a guy that's been with us before, and I feel like this is definitely going to be one of those under the radar signings in terms of just name recognition, all of that. But for me, I'm actually really intrigued and excited by this. This is a guy that I think we've both been kind of fascinated by, has an interesting story. So tell people a little bit about what this signing
real
could be.
Small school guy. I think Wagner, if I remember correctly. You know, he came in, made the roster as an undrafted free agent out of Wagner in his rookie year. Didn't really play a lot, and then very notably got his very first sack ever in the Super Bowl. Half and half with Ndamukong Suh. But then in 2021, only played maybe 100 snaps of defense, but did have a sack and a half, had some quarterback pressures. And last year going into training camp, you know, we eventually signed Carl Nassib and Jannard Avery, right? But the plan was he was going to be the fourth guy in your OLB rotation, which means he would have played a handful of snaps, and then had it been that way when Shaq got hurt, he would have moved up into the third role and would have played a lot
more.
Instead, he had a Liz Frank injury in his right foot in the first preseason game, was gone for the year, and the Bucs eventually signed Carl Nassib and Jannard Avery. But he was intended to have a pretty significant role, and so we'll see if he can do that again. He plays on special teams as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to emphasize not only like what you said about he being an undrafted guy who was able to make the roster, it was in the COVID year where there was like no off season. So I think about what a limited time this guy had. It's already the
no preseason games
stacked against you in terms of even having, you know, that ability no matter what when you're undrafted, but when there's almost no snaps, that speaks so highly to what he does. And then you see it when he gets in the games, so few snaps, and he makes that mark, that he's a guy that no matter how little he's given, he makes something of it. It reminds me kind of what we talked about with Mike Edwards, of where he may not have played as much, but every time he was in, it felt like he got an interception. That Cam Gill kind of feels like that to me, of when he may not play that many snaps, but when he gets in there, he makes a mark.
You know who else came in the league as an undrafted guy and kind of waited his chance to get a shot? Shaq Barrett.
That's true. And what a great guy to learn from in recent years.
We do have a couple bits of news so we can talk about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been told, you know, I know we've been said several times, we really, before the team announces things, you kind of have to sit on a little bit like we did with Baker Mayfield last year. But I am led to believe that Greg Gaines, the defensive lineman from the Rams, is going to officially sign today with the Buccaneers, and that Levante David, thank goodness, is going to officially sign. So that's probably going to happen today.
Yes. So. Well, and the Greg Gaines one is interesting, just in general. Where do you see our defensive line at this point, and in terms of who we have, who is that, you know, how much of a position is that going to be where they might still need to add some pieces, and, you know, just how those snaps are going to be shared at this point?
Well, you've already lost Rakeem Nunez-Roches or Nacho to the Giants, so at the very least, it's a one-for-one replacement there. And Nacho played a lot, you know, especially when Vito would get banged up. Real good backup nose tackle. I think Greg Gaines probably has a little bit more of a pass rush to him. He's had 8.5 sacks in the last couple of years. Really kind of didn't get a lot of playing time his first couple of years, but has the last two, and has really kind of, you know, emerged as a pretty decent guy in there to give you. He's sturdy and good against the run, but he gives a little bit of a pass rush too. Him and Vita Vea played together for 3 years at Washington, and their stats for those 3 years were practically identical.
Yeah, our scouts love them some Washington guys, and we've been able to see why.
They're all up and down the line.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, even Kate Otten, right?
That's right, but I'm also was thinking you meant Joe Tryon.
Yes, that's it. But I was just saying in general, like our team overall, they're just collecting these guys. They've done pretty well.
So that's a good addition, and obviously we're thrilled to have Levante still around.
Yes, everyone is excited for that. All right, well, we are going to also record our road to the draft after this. So for all these moves that we just talked about and more, we're going to discuss how they might affect what the Bucs are or are not going to do in the draft. So make sure you stay tuned for that later on Buccaneers.com, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.